Hello, I'm Sarah from Worldwide Lawyers, and today I'm going to be giving you 10 top tips about buying a property in Spain. The first top tip is to always make sure that you instruct an independent English-speaking Spanish lawyer to assist you with your property purchase. You should make sure that your lawyer is entirely independent of any estate agent, the seller or developer, just to make sure that they are looking after only your interests. For more information about how you go about finding a good foreign lawyer, please see our other YouTube video on this topic. The second top tip is to check the ownership of the property. There is a document available from the land registry called the Nota Simple, which provides lots of information about the property and also includes details of who actually owns it. So you should check these details against the information that you have about the sellers. It does sound obvious, but you'd be surprised, so just make sure that you do check that out. The third tip is also to check the property description. So on that same document, the Nota Simple, there will be information about things like the boundaries and the square footage and any buildings that are on the land that you're buying and so forth. So you should check that this is accurate when compared with what you've actually seen. On that point, you should never ever take any steps to buy a property without having physically seen it first. You may laugh, but this does happen, so you should always make sure that you have actually seen the property, and then you can cross-reference this against any information contained in the Nota Simple to make sure that you are aware of exactly what you're buying. Tip number 4 is to check the classification of the property and what local laws apply to it. So in terms of the classification, you should check whether it is a rustic property, an urban or urbanisable, as this will have relevance to how the local laws are applied to the property. And in particular, the infamous Valencia land grab laws are relevant to how the land is classified. For more information about that topic, we also have a YouTube video about the Spanish land grab, so do check that out. In terms of other relevant laws that may be applicable, you should also make sure that the land is not reserved for agricultural use and that you have full permission for it being used for residential purposes. And if you're buying a coastal property, you will need to check that you have all the permissions and consents required to build on that land. There have been some coastal properties that have been built without permissions, and it can be quite tricky to get that permission retrospectively, and so you need to make sure that that has been obtained before you actually purchase any coastal properties. Tip number 5 is get a survey done. If you wouldn't buy a property in the UK without having a survey, why do it in Spain? So you need to make sure that your roof's not about to fall down or your swimming pool's not about to slide down the valley. And you may find that if there are structural defects with the property, then the relatively low cost of getting a survey done would have been money well spent. So do invest in getting a proper survey done before you purchase the property. Number 6 is that you should check that there are no debts registered against the property. In Spain, debts such as mortgages and unpaid taxes are registered against the property itself and not against the owner. So if you did buy a property without checking that these had been discharged, then these debts would actually fall to be due from yourself rather than the previous owners. So you should make sure that your lawyer has obtained receipts and all proof that any debts or mortgages or utilities or any unpaid taxes have been satisfied before the property does pass to yourself. You should also check as well that all building permissions have been complied with. It's not uncommon for some resale properties to have been modified or extended in some way without actually having the proper planning permissions obtained. So you will just need to make sure that these additions either weren't carried out without the planning permission, or if they were, that this has all been legalised and identified before you actually proceed to buy the property. Tip number 8 is that you should know that any extra costs incurred with buying the property, for example, you may already be aware that purchase tax will be due in relation to the purchase of the property, and this is actually due on the cadastral value of the property rather than the actual purchase price. So you'll need to know what that value is so that you can accurately calculate how much tax will actually be due. And you'll also need to check any ongoing costs associated with the property to make sure that this is actually something you can realistically afford going forward. Tip number 9 is check if there are any building restrictions on the property. You may want to buy the property for its building potential, and if you haven't got if you're not allowed to make those alterations, you will ask yourself whether you do in fact want to actually carry on with the purchase. And it may well be that there's restrictions or green zones or public rights of way that may affect your plans, so you will need to be aware of those before you take the plunge and actually purchase the property. And number 10 is actually check whether there's any rental restrictions. Many people, particularly British people buying in Spain, often want to purchase a property that they want to then rent out to other tourists so that they can help pay the mortgage or any ongoing costs. In some areas, particularly in Spain, there are many areas where actual tourist rents are restricted, and there are many local laws that prohibit would prohibit you from renting your home out to other holiday makers. So you need to check this out, because some of these restrictions have been dormant for years, but over recent years they've been actively enforced, and fines can be imposed in the tens of thousands of pounds. So you do want to check that if you are planning on renting your property out in the future, that you either comply with any restrictions or that you buy it in an area that is not subject to any tourist rental restrictions. And even if it's not something that you're planning to do yourself, you may want to consider whether this would affect any value of your property for any ongoing sale further down the line. So I hope that's been helpful for you. If you do need any assistance with purchasing a property in Spain, give Worldwide Lawyers a call and we can help put you in touch with an English-speaking independent lawyer who will take the hassle out of the purchase for you. Good luck.